Right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Diesel Arsenal channel. Thanks very much for coming and joining us this evening. Hold on just a sec. Thanks very much for joining us for this show, and we're just about to get started. So on we go. So hold on, what's going on here? 1, 2, engines initiated. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Engines on. 10. We have liftoff. So tonight's show is about the Apollo moon landing, and we're trying to figure out whether or not it was faked. So please stay with me, and we're going to talk about lots of different things. In a minute, I'm just going to go through what we're going to discuss. Just give me 2 seconds. I'll be with you in 2 minutes. I should have had this ready at the beginning, but I forgot to do it. It ain't really good, is it? Right, sorry guys, I was just getting my script up because I need, when I'm doing this, it's probably something to do with my age, to be honest. I need a script so I can see what it is I'm supposed to be talking about each time I put a slide up and whatnot. So just bear with me a minute and we'll get these slides sorted out. Right. Okay. So we've got a couple of people in the chat already. So we've got the Aussie Gooner, and he says likes are free, people. Yeah, they are. So please make sure you hit the like button. Please make sure you subscribe to Diesel's channel if you haven't done so already. And also come pay my channel a visit, Warren's Team Talk, and make sure you subscribe to me as well. Oregon Gooners here as well. He's saying, come on, Diesel, son. Well, he's here. So he was here and he let me in. So fair play to him. And he's off doing something else now. So he's left me to man it while I'm doing my thing. So here we go. Let's get on with it. So, like I just said about subscribing to mine and Diesel's channel. So this is what we're going to talk about, okay? In this show, I propose to look at the big question as to whether or not the Apollo 11 moon landings and the whole Apollo moon program was faked. I will look at the build up to the United States landing on the moon on the 20th of July, 1969. How the world was between the end of World War II and 1969, when it was all what's happened here? It's chopped off a bit of the text. Right, okay, hold on a sec. So, right. Right, okie doke. Sorry, guys. It's a bit rubbish, really, isn't it? Sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble here with this damn thing. Right, yeah, okay. So here we go. So as I was saying, we're going to look at how the world was between the end of World War II and 1969, when it is alleged the United States landed 2 men on the moon. Some of the theories circulating regarding the Apollo 11 landing on the moon in 1969, the untold story of the moon landings, the human perspective of those involved, and then we'll just wrap it up at the end. So, the background information. So, after the end of the Second World War in 1945, the world had 2 major superpowers, which were the United States of America and the Soviet Union, USSR/CCP, who were allies during the Second World War against Nazi Germany. Now, towards the end of the Second World War, there was a major concern in the West that the Soviet Union, about the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany being very, there was a major concern in the West and the Soviet Union about Nazi Germany being very close to developing nuclear weapons and also other highly advanced weapons systems such as aircraft and intercontinental rockets and weapons such as the infamous V1 and V2 rockets. So, now, by the end of World War II, the Soviet Union had more or less spread its communist ideology throughout all of Eastern Europe and as far west as what was then Eastern Germany. And the USA's democratic and free market ideology prevailed in Western Europe, and the 2 superpowers split Berlin in half, and the dividing point was the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin. Also, as a consequence, Germany was split in 2, West Germany, which had a free market ideology, and East Germany, which had a communist ideology. At this time, both the United States and the Soviet Union sought to prove the superiority of its technology, its military firepower, and its way of life, and by extension, its political and economic systems. Now, by the mid-1950s, the US-Soviet Cold War had worked its way into the fabric of everyday life in both countries, fueled by the arms race and growing threat of nuclear weapons. There was wide-ranging espionage and counter-espionage between the 2 countries, and the war in Korea, and a clash of words and ideas carried out in the media. Now, I can remember growing up as a kid in England. Like it got quite scary, really, because almost on a daily basis you'd get stuff on the news about there being, a threat to world peace because of the Soviet Union, and that we needed to be mindful, and they were telling us what to do if there was a nuclear attack and stuff like that. So it did get quite scary, to be honest. You were seeing this stuff on the news almost on a daily basis, and yeah, it got really, really scary. They were sending out leaflets in the post, and I think one of them was called "Protect and Survive," stuff like that. So yeah, it was quite intense. And then, you know, as us as kids as well, we're having debates about it at school and stuff like that. Now, these tensions would continue throughout the space race, and exacerbated were by such events as the construction of the Berlin Wall in 1961, the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, and the outbreak of war in Southeast Asia. Now, in the heart of communist-controlled East Germany lay Berlin. So Berlin was like sort of in the middle of East Berlin. It was like a pocket inside East Berlin, right? So it was split down the middle between the west, which was the western half was, and that was controlled by the Americans, the British, and the French, and the eastern half was controlled by the Soviets. It was also widely regarded around the world that scientists from Nazi Germany were amongst the best, if not the best, in the world. A little known fact is that skin grafts came out of Nazi Germany after the experiments that they did on prisoners. They did on prisoners of wars and the Jews. So, yeah, it's absolutely disgusting. It really, and I find it sickening, to be quite honest. So what we're going to do now, we're going to talk about this chap, Werner von Braun, because he's got a big part to play in this story. At the end of World War II, the United States launched Operation Paperclip so they could get their hands on as many of the Nazi scientists as they could. And one of the scientists that they managed to get to the United States was a chap by the name of Werner von Braun, who you can see in this picture here. So Why Not Spursy is in the chat, and he says, big up, Warren. Big up yourself, mate. Thanks very much for coming in. I hope you're good. And yeah, so von Braun was Nazi Germany's leading scientist and was responsible for developing the infamous V2 rocket. And by 1960, he would go on to work for NASA as director of the newly formed Marshall Space Flight Center, and he was the chief architect of the Saturn V super heavyweight launch vehicle that propelled the Apollo spacecraft to the moon. Now, this guy, this Werner von Braun, he has got a really, really bad reputation. Jeff's in the chat. He says, yes, Joseph Mengele was never caught dead in Brazil. Yep, that's true. Apparently, they found his body on a beach in Brazil. I remember watching the documentary series that was on TV, Hunting Hitler, and that was one of the things they talked about, how his body was found on a beach somewhere in Brazil. And Why Not Spursy? Mikel Arteta, love Arsenal, hate Kronk. He says, big up DVS. Yeah, exactly. Big up to DVS. Carne AFC 84's in the chat. Oh, shit. I nearly forgot about this. Warren, I hope you're well, mate, and everyone else in the chat. Yeah, I'm good, Carne. I hope you're good as well, mate. I hope you're going to enjoy the show. Now, this fella, he was a full-on Nazi, absolute evil bastard. Sorry, excuse my language, but he was absolutely evil. What he used to do is that he would, like, every week, I think it was every week, it might even have been every day, the slowest worker of the people he had working in his factories, whether they were Jews or prisoners of war, the one that was the slowest, every week he would hang them outside the building as a warning to the other workers. So, honestly, the man is pure evil, absolute evil. Carne says, Gemma says hi, Warren. And we'll say hi to her for me as well. I hope she's good. Why Not Spursy? Why not Spursy? Mikel Arteta, love Arsenal, hate Kroenke. Big up G Herrings. Carney, the real ones are here. Exactly. All the top people are here. It's great. So anyway, the Americans and the Soviets were by this time embroiled. They were embroiled in a desperate race to gain the upper hand in space, because it was felt that if they controlled space, they could also control the affairs on planet Earth. This battle of ideologies also manifested itself in other fields such as politics and sport, just to name a few. And every time one of them would get their upper hand over the other, they would take it as justification that their way of life was the right one. This was particularly true in sport, especially the Olympics, where there were allegations of doping and wide-scale cheating were commonplace during this time. And in fact, I've heard stories that at the Moscow Olympics in 1980, the Soviet Union would open the stadium gates when one of their athletes was about to throw a javelin, so they could get some wind behind the javelins as they were throwing it. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea, but I wouldn't disbelieve it. So Sputnik 1 was the world's first artificial satellite. The Soviet Union kickstarted the space race with Sputnik 1 when on the 4th of October 1957, they launched the first artificial satellite, Sputnik 1. A month later, they launched Sputnik 2, which had a dog on board named Laika, who sadly died. And in the USA, there was widespread fear that if the Soviets could launch a rocket into space, they could also launch a nuclear warhead into American airspace after the USSR launched Sputnik 1. The Americans then launched their first satellite on the 1st of February 1958, which started the space race. And then on the 12th of April 1961, the Soviet Union put the first man, Yuri Gagarin, into space when they launched Vostok 1. So then, on the 25th of May, 1961, President John F. Kennedy told the US Congress, "I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before the decade is out of landing a man on the moon." This statement really ignited the space race. It is also clear how important it was to both sides to win the space race and win control of this new frontier for mankind. On the 20th of July 1969, Apollo 11 landed at 2 men on the moon and effectively won the space race. So one funny aspect, or story I should say, about the space race is that apparently the Americans spent millions of dollars trying to develop a pen that could write upside down, but the Soviets just used a pencil. So there you go. And Carney AFC 84 says, Spursy Mikel, yes, bruv. And then Jeff P says, 100% agree with what you're saying. The Nazi scientists who were taken back by the USA and the Soviet Union were not nice Nazis at all, but the best scientists should have been on trial for war crimes. Exactly, when they got them out of it. That was one of the attractions for these people to go to the Soviet Union or the USSR, was so that they could escape the war crimes trials they would otherwise have faced. Oregon Gooner says, why not Spursy, Mikel Arteta, big up. And Carly AFC 84. What do you guys feel about this subject? True or false? Mate, I'm coming to that a little bit later. First of all, I'm just building up to it. I'm giving you all the background about how it developed and why it kicked off like this. But I promise you, later, stick with me and you're going to find out what I think. So let's move on. So please, everyone, if you've not subscribed to Diesel's channel already, please make sure that you put a like on this video for him and for me as well. And also, please make sure that you subscribe to Diesel's channel. He's an absolutely top fella. He does brilliant videos, and he's not like me reading off a script. He's completely unscripted. When he comes on, it's just completely off the cuff. Whatever comes into his head comes out of his mouth, basically. He's an absolutely top man, and please give him your support. Also, while you're at it, please come over to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. Do a search for me in Google, you'll be able to find it. So in YouTube, you'll be able to find me. I'm also on Instagram and I'm on Twitter, but I don't really use Twitter that much, to be frank, except when I'm having a go at the club about Liam Brady and whatnot, because I think that was absolutely disgusting, that carry on. But still, that's another subject. Anyway, so yeah, please come over to my channel as well and subscribe to me. So what are some of the other theories regarding the Apollo 11 moon landing? Let me start by just saying that I understand why people would say that the moon landing was faked, given the circumstances in place at the end of World War II and the pressures that both of the world's great superpowers were under to get to the moon first. Right, I completely understand it. And you'll find out what I think about it later. But I can understand why people would say that. I really do, because the pressure that these people were under to show that they were the first ones to the moon was absolutely immense. It really was. So let's start by considering what it would take to fake a moon landing. So the guy in the picture there, for those of you who don't know, I'm sure most of you do, is a chap called Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's a leading astrophysicist, and his area of specialism, obviously, is space. He's a really funny guy. I don't necessarily agree with most of what he says, but I do find him quite humorous, the way he delivers his information. He comes over as quite a cool guy and whatnot, and he likes to play up on that. So bless him. But yeah, he's a sound enough fella. So there was a huge rocket on the launch pad. So we all saw the thing launch. It went up into space, or so they say. There were countless numbers of people employed on the program, potentially thousands. All of these people would have had to buy into the plan and stay quiet. Now, the problem is all of this Apollo program was run by NASA, right? And orchestrated by NASA. And the problem is that NASA isn't good at keeping secrets. Someone would say, certainly have said something, or so, they would they're not good at keeping secrets at all. And some would say deliberately so, because they like to give out false information and like send people down the wrong track and stuff like that. And it's a known fact that they do that. All the documents would have had to been faked. Faking all the footage of the people mission control staff who were on the world's TV screens, the astronauts, and the reactions to what they were going through and what they were experiencing. So Neil deGrasse Tyson would famously said, when asked this question, wouldn't it just be easier to go to the moon? So what are some of the most popular theories explaining why some people believe that the moon landing was faked? So before we do that, let's go into the chat again. And so Carney says, okay, sweet Warren, absolutely fine, mate. I'm loving this. I really, really enjoyed putting this show together, I'm telling you. I'll try and stay as long as I can. And Narandra's Muddy says Americans couldn't even put a man in space. So how do they get a man on the moon? Not possible. Americans are all Hollywood being fake. Okay, let's see if you think that at the end, Narendra. But yeah, it's interesting. It really is, because we've gone to a situation where allegedly we have someone on the moon. Now we can't even get out of Earth orbit. It's very weird. Why not Spursy, Mikel Arteta, love Arsenal, hate Kroenke. Salute, gents. And Ali D, nothing controversial about it. It's BS, sorry. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong one. Nothing controversial about it. BS, just like the most things we thought is true. Okay. So, why not Spursy, Mikel Arteta, love Arsenal, hate Kroenke? Only way it could be fake if they used alien tech from Area 51 and a green screen. There you go. See? Nassandra says, in recent times, NASA was using Soviet rockets to put shuttles into space. Soviet military tech was way more advanced. NASA spent millions designing a pen that could work in space while Soviets used a pencil. Exactly, that's what I said just now. Ali D, NASA equals deceit in Hebrew. There you go, you see? They're not to be trusted, I'm telling you. Anyway, so one of the big theories about the moon landing was that Stanley Kubrick was hired to fake the moon landings. Now, there he is in the pictures, and look at him. He looks an absolute nutter, doesn't he? He looks really, really off-key, that fella. Really off-key, that fella. First of all, it is true to say that NASA did have mock-ups of the moon's surface made in studios for training purposes. It is alleged that the US government tried to persuade Stanley Kubrick, depending on who you listen to be involved in the filming of fake footage of a moon landing, or hand over keys to his studios so that the US government could film fake footage. Because he's filmed 2001, there's a big chunk of that film which is about the moon. So yeah, I could believe that that would have happened. So let's move on. So Stanley Kubrick also, he's well known for lacing his films with hidden bits of information. For example, in his film 2001, the onboard computer, which in the film tries to kill its human crew, is called HAL. And if you take the letters of the name of the onboard computer and move them all forward one character in the alphabet, you get IBM, which is International Business Machines Corporation, and it is an American multinational technology corporation. It is alleged that the Stanley Kubrick film, The Shining, also has hidden messages about the moon landing. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at some of these theories about the Shining film. In the film, you see a kid playing on a carpet and with some fire trucks, and it is claimed that the way that the trucks are laid out on the carpet and the position that that the kid is sat in mirrors that of the layout of NASA's launch pad. In the film, the young kid called Danny gets up and walks down the corridor to room 237. Now, in the book, it's room 217, but in the film, it's 237. The significance of this is that it is claimed the moon is 237 miles from Earth. Now, the only problem with that is because of the orbit that the moon has around the Earth, the distance between the Earth and the moon changes a lot. So at some points, it is 237 miles, 237,000 miles, but sometimes it's less than that, sometimes it's more. Joanne Smith's in the chat. She says, "Oh, hello. I didn't get notifications." Oh, that's a bit weird. IBM. Bill Gates' mother was big general in IBM. They were involved in creating barcode tech used to tag Jews. Oh, dear God. So in this picture here, you can see it's from The Shining, and it's the young boy, Danny, wearing an Apollo 11 jumper. And the film also shows the kid wearing a jumper with the picture of the Apollo 11 on, as I just said. In the film, Danny comes out of room 237. He has marks on his throat, and his jumper is ripped and torn. Now, in the film, his mother then understandably questions him and is quite visibly upset, as she wants to know what happened to him, but he's unable to speak, which many claim is a direct reference to Kubrick being forced to stay silent about his role in the moon landing. Now, throughout the film, there are other references to the Apollo 11 mission, such as a box which has the number 39 on it, which is the launch pad number which the rocket for the Apollo 11 missions was launched from. And in the storeroom of the Hotel of The Shining, there are various tins of something called Tang, which is a drink which the astronauts used on space flights. Hold on, where are we? I've just lost my place. Yeah, oh, here we go. Now, some other theories put forward to support the idea that moon landing was faked. Let's go to the next one. It says it's claimed that there's no wind on the moon, yet there is an American flag which can be clearly seen flapping. Now, it is true there is no wind on the moon. Now, as we discussed earlier, the moon landing happened during the height of the Cold War and the space race, the Cold War and the space race. And during this time, NASA, otherwise known by me as Never a Straight Answer, and the USA in general put a lot of importance on public image and PR and marketing. Some would argue that they still do, but with the importance that it is given in certain sport, as well as the importance that is given in certain sports clubs that we all know around the world that are owned by Americans. I'll leave you to work out who I'm talking about. I think you probably all know. Bearing this in mind, the Americans clearly wanted the American flag to appear like it was flying and fully extended in all the footage that was captured by the astronauts on the moon. The Americans knew, however, that it would be impossible for this to happen. So naturally, because there is no wind on the moon, and so they decided to put a rod inside the flag so it would appear as though the flag was flying as it would on Earth in a windy environment. So there you can see guys putting a rod inside the American flag. Unfortunately, the rod got damaged, and so the flag appeared as though it was flapping, but it was because allegedly, so they claim, that the rod was broken, and therefore it would appear like it was flapping, even though it wasn't, as they had done this, the flag would have simply just hung limply next to the flagpole, and it wouldn't have been a very good look for a country where image is quite important. So let's move on. So once again, guys, make sure you subscribe to the Diesel Arsenal channel, and make sure you put a like on this video, please. And also at the same time, make sure you come to Warren's Team Talk and subscribe to my channel, and put likes on my videos and stuff like that. At the end of the show, I'm going to tell you about what I've got coming up on my channel as well. So let's move on. Let's go into the chat again. Naranda Modi says they say the camera used to take pictures was a normal film type, which wouldn't have worked with the radiation on the moon. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but there was certainly cameras on the outside of the spaceship when it landed. So let's move on. Right, so what we're going to talk about now is the Van Allen belt. The Van Allen belts, because there's more than one of them. Now, it's claimed the radiation in the Van Allen belts would have killed the astronauts. The Earth has two belts of radiation called Van Allen belts, which are held around it by our planet's magnetic field at an altitude varying between approximately 400 and 36,000 miles. It is true that the levels of radiation in the Van Allen belt are dangerously high, but the astronaut spaceship flew through the belt at such high speed they were not exposed to the radiation for long enough for it to be a problem. Just to give some perspective, the astronauts at this point in their journey would have been traveling at 23,864 miles per hour. Traveling at that speed, it would roughly take 26 minutes to fly between London in the UK and Sydney in Australia. So let's move on. So the next theory I want to talk about is that there's no stars in the black sky in any of the photographs. This is a very easy one to test. All you need to do is go outside, even in an area which has very little light pollution, which is a massive problem if you're a keen amateur astronomer. But go outside and try and take a photograph of the night sky with your smartphone and see what happens. What you will find is that you will get a photograph of the night sky in complete darkness. If you wanted to see the night sky with stars in your photograph, you would need to use an exposure time of between a few seconds and a good few minutes. And this is why the footage of the lunar landing or the astronauts looking out of their spaceship window, you do not see any stars. So the next one, let's move on. So the moon has only one source of light, but the shadows go in different directions. Now, when considering this one, it is important to remember that the moon's surface is extremely uneven due to all the mountains, craters, and rocks on the surface, and that when the sun does hit the moon's surface, it can bounce off in different directions, which can give the illusion that there are multiple light sources. Now, the thing is to remember as well that the moon's surface is very reflective, And in addition to this, there is a small amount of light that shines on the moon's surface from the Earth's oceans, which is known as Earthshine. So basically, the sunlight hits planet Earth, and where the oceans are, it reflects light back into space, and that goes to the moon. The question is often asked: how come you can clearly see Neil Armstrong walking down the ladder to the surface of the moon from the ladder door, from the lunar lander's door? So the reason for this is because when light comes from the sun, it hits the lunar surface, some of it bounces off, and when this happens, it turns the moon into a reflective light source. And this is why when an astronaut is stood in the shadows of a lunar module, they are not stood in complete darkness, because some of the light from the moon softens the shadows. So the next one, there is no blast crater at the landing module's landing site. So the reason that there's no crater on the moon surface is because of the lunar lander landing on the moon's surface, because the moon has roughly 1/6 of the gravity that the Earth does. So, for example, if someone weighed 200 pounds on Earth, they would weigh approximately 34 pounds on the moon. So this means that in the case of the Apollo 11 lunar lander on the moon, it would need far more reverse thrust to slow it down and land it safely on the moon. It also means that it would not cause that much of a dust cloud when it landed. Sorry, I meant to say it would not need so much reverse thrust, not need far more. Sorry. It would land safely on the moon without that much of creating that much of a dust cloud when it landed, and it would certainly not be enough to cause a crater. So let's move on. So the next big question is, who filmed Neil Armstrong climbing down the lunar module to take his historic steps on the moon if he was the first person on the moon? Who the hell was filming him then? Now, this is an interesting one and goes back to what I was saying about the importance of image and PR in American culture, particularly at the height of the Cold War and the space race, because a lot of it with the space race and the Cold War was about psychological warfare as well. So NASA, as I said, never a straight answer, place cameras all over the outside of their ships so that the photographic opportunity, so they wouldn't miss the photographic opportunity of all time, and so that it could be recorded, including Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon, the spacewalks, lunar landings, and takeoffs. Now, despite this, my biggest interest in the moon is what the astronauts found when they got to the moon. And for me, this is the real big mystery, not whether or not the landing was hoaxed. And we'll be talking about that in a little while. To be honest, I think NASA and the Americans are happy that people are so interested in whether or not the moon landing was hoaxed, because it is taking attention away from the other things that President Kennedy spoke about when he publicly proclaimed in 1961 that by the end of the decade, the Americans wanted to put a man on the moon and bring him back safely home again. So what do I think about the Apollo moon landing? So you can see me there with my tin hat on. And I definitely think that the Americans sent men to the moon. And for me, by far the biggest counter argument about why the Apollo missions and the moon landings were not faked is the film made by a gentleman by the name of Al Reinhardt called For All Mankind. Now, for those of you who haven't seen this film, I strongly urge that you go and watch it if you're interested in things to do with space, and even if you're interested in, I guess, psychology, you'd call it, because it's all about how these guys who were traveling to the moon felt being the first humans in going to another world. And honestly, it's mind-blowing. It had a massive, profound effect on me, I have to say. I'm going to put the link for this film. It's available on YouTube. I'm going to put it in the description, in the comments section of this video tomorrow, so that anyone who's interested in it can go and click on it and watch it. And honestly, I really would encourage you to do so if you're interested in this sort of stuff, because it is absolutely mind-blowing. So there's some new comments in the chat. Let me see if I can see those. Hold on a sec. So Neandra says that traveling in space is different because it's just a vacuum. That's 100% true. And what I found quite interesting was the Challenger space shuttle, the one that blew up just after it took off. There was going to be an astronaut on there who was able to play the saxophone, and he was going to play a piece of music that was composed for him, especially by a chap by the name of Jean-Michel Jarre. It's called The Last Rendezvous. But what I was interested about is that if space is a vacuum, that means that you can't hear sound. So I don't quite know how that was going to work, but still, there you go. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Nassandra. Taib says that picture reminds me of the Thunderbirds laugh out loud. Which one's that, Taib? Right, okay. So once again, people, make sure, please, you go and subscribe to Diesel Arsenal. Make sure you subscribe to him. Put a like on the video for tonight's show as well, please. And also, please come and subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk, and make sure you watch my shows. Put your notifications on for both mine and Diesel's channels, so that you get notified anytime either of us put up a video. So here you go. So this is an image of that film I was telling you about, For All Mankind. In this documentary, Al Reinhardt tells the story from the perspective of the astronauts who were involved in the Apollo program, and they described what they experienced and how it felt to be an astronaut working on the Apollo program. And like I say, it's absolutely mind-blowing because it's not based around science. It's based on them as human beings and how they felt. Honestly, it's incredible. For me, it's mind-blowing and by far and away my favorite documentary of all time. Like I say, tomorrow I'm going to put a link in the comments section of this video for anyone who wants to watch it. Let me guarantee you, if you haven't seen this documentary before and you even have the slightest interest in space travel or human thoughts and feelings, you're going to find it fascinating. And for those of you science junkies, let me warn you, this is not a science documentary. It's a documentary about the effect that being an astronaut on the Apollo program had on these people. I've taken some quotes from the astronauts that were on the Apollo program, and I'd like to go through them with you. So let's go through those. So before we do that, I'm just going to read out to you what Brian Eno said. Brian Eno wrote the music for the documentary. He's a famous record producer, and he was hired by Al Reinhardt to compose the music of this film. And in his notes for the film, one of the things that he mentions is that he tried to write music which represents the unique mixture of feelings that quite possibly no other human being has ever experienced before, which obviously is true, because if they did go to the moon, then no one would have had the feelings that they had. And Brian Eno said, I was excited by this project. It afforded me an opportunity to explore the feelings of space travel, being weightless, seeing the nighttime campfires of Saharan nomads from high above the earth, looking back to a little blue planet drifting alone in space, looking out into the endless darkness beyond, and finally stepping onto another planet. I don't see this as an adventure film, and I've not written an adventure music. What this film can do is present a set of moods or unique mixtures of feelings that quite possibly no human had ever experienced before, thus expanding the vocabulary of human feeling, just as those missions had expanded the boundaries of our universe. I hope this music will assist in that. So that's what he said. And the music, I have to say, I bought the CDs, and they're absolutely fantastic. I love that. I like that sort of music. So yeah, it's great. Honestly, the whole package for me is superb. And like I said, it had a big, profound effect on me. So let's try and get what happened here. Right. So now we're going to talk about this guy, President Kennedy. At the very beginning of the documentary, President Kennedy says, "We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard." Now, for me, what's these other things that he's talking about? I find this comment extremely weird, particularly where he's talking about the other things. What other things? What's he talking about? And then if we move on. So this picture might look a bit weird. What it is, it's taken from the spaceship window, and it's astronauts talking about the nomads out living in the desert as they fly over above. In Africa, it says, in Africa, there are a lot of nomads, and you can see their fires on clear nights, which are little yellow dots, which represent people, the nomads, camping out in an environment which I would find more strange than the one that they might think that I'm in. Yeah, so there you go. He's like flying over, and he can see from the spaceship the nomads camping out in the desert. And I've drawn lines to the nomads so you can see them. That bluey stuff that you can see in the picture is clouds. So I found that quite interesting, really. So talking about feelings of weightlessness, your first feelings of weightlessness is what the astro said. It's like when you're driving down a country lane at 50 miles per hour and you go over a bump and your stomach goes up into your mouth. Anyone who lives in the countryside will know what this chap's talking about. I live in the countryside, and I've been over bumps, and that happens, right? It's weird feeling. And then when you go back down over the bump, your stomach goes back down again. It's true, it does. Except in space, your stomach doesn't go back down again. So that must be really weird feeling. then, right, so what we're going to talk about now is the translunar injection burn. So basically what happens when they had these missions to the moon, what they would have to do, they'd have to go around the planet a few times. For some reason, it helps build up speed. And then suddenly, you know, when you see you were a kid, you'd like throw something around you, throw it around your head, spin it around your head, and then you let it go. That it's the same sort of principle. And then talking, and so we're going to do, when they do shoot off, like they rockets on and fire up the engines, and with the momentum that's built up from going around the planet, with the extra burn from the rocket engines, it gives them a huge build-up of speed. So talking about the speed that the astronauts are traveling at during the translunar injection burn, because that's when they really kick on to go off to the moon. They travel at close to 35,000 feet per second, or 126 million feet per hour, which is 1 mile every 5,280 feet. So therefore, 23,864 miles per hour. Now, bearing in mind the speed of light is 671 million miles per hour, and sound is 767 miles per hour in air. At this point, the narrator points out that these three men are now traveling faster than any man that's ever traveled before. To put it in perspective, traveling at that speed, it would have taken the three astronauts 27 minutes to travel between London and Sydney in Australia. And currently, the average journey time between the two is 21 hours and 40 minutes. So it's minuscule amount of time, really, when you compare how long it normally would take. So after the first part of the burn, this is the view they would have had from the spaceship. So at this point, one of the astronauts is talking about the change of perspective, looking back at the planet Earth from space. And he says, you don't really think about it as Texas, United States. You really just think of it as Earth. And the three things that you associate with the Earth are people, green trees, and fresh water. So it's obviously had a profound effect on him. And then let's move on. What's the bloody mouse pointer? Right, here we go. So halfway between the Earth and the moon, there was a TV transmission halfway between the Earth and the moon. And the astronaut says that the transmission is coming to you from approximately halfway between the moon and the Earth. It makes you realize what you have when you have back there on Earth. You sometimes had to just pinch yourself and ask yourself the question: do you really understand where you are in this point in time, space, and reality? Then you look out of the window and you see the most beautiful star in the heavens. And it's the most beautiful because it's the one we understand, the one we know. It's people. It's people. Where are we? I've lost myself. It's people, humanity, family, love, life, and apart from that, it's beautiful. It is beautiful, and you can see from pole to pole, across oceans and continents. You can watch it turn, and there's no strings attached to it holding it up. It's just there floating in blackness, which is beyond conception. So then this guy, astronaut John L. Swigert, when he started talking, when I was watching this, when I first watched it, it had a real profound impact on me. And he's talking about his feeling looking back from space. And he says, he was talking about he's what it means to him, what the Earth means to him. And it's my favorite part of the documentary. And like I said, it had a real light bulb moment for me. At this point, the astronauts are approximately 150,000 miles from Earth. And one of them says, everything I know, my family, my possessions, my friends, my country is all down there on that tiny little blue thing. And it's so insignificant in the great big vastness of space. So he's sitting there and everything that he knows is on something about the size of his thumbnail, because that's how big it would have been for him. And the thing is, this was filmed in 1969. So at this point, I was 2 years old. So I was thinking to myself, this is going to sound really off key, but I was thinking to myself, if they had a powerful enough camera, they would have been able to zoom in on me, probably, and they would have been able to see me laying in my cot. And that just completely freaked me out. It really did. So now, NASA's Apollo 13 mission. For me, it's arguably NASA's greatest ever achievement. Astronaut Alan Bean said about the lunar trip. Sorry, we'll come to that in a minute. In the documentary, there is footage from what I believe was the Apollo 13 mission, when the spaceship developed a serious malfunction. And had it not been repaired, it would have ended up killing the astronauts. And thankfully, this did not happen. And the astronauts were safely able to return to the Earth. But in order to do this, they had to improvise and use things in the different ways to what they were from what they were designed, and they really had to think outside the box. And I don't know if any of you have seen the film Apollo 13, but it's true what happened in that film, that everything they kept trying kept going wrong. And I'm not sure if it's true, but I think this is one of the reasons why people think that number 13 is unlucky. So there you go. Now, astronaut Alan Bean talking about the lunar trip. So Alan Bean said about the lunar trip, one of the things that is different about a lunar trip is that, first of all, you take off, then you are in Earth orbit, and after a couple of days and not passing anywhere else along the way and not having any waypoints along the way, you arrive at the moon, which makes it even a little bit magical getting there in the first place. So astronaut Richard F. Gordon, who was the command module pilot for Apollo 12, which means that he was not able to go down onto the surface of the moon, because what happened whenever they had a mission, there was at least 3 people. 2 of them would go down to the surface, and 1 would stay in like the main spaceship, which would continually circle the moon until the guys who went down to the moon came back again in the lunar lander. So he wasn't able to go down to the surface of the moon because only 2 people could go in the lunar module to the moon's surface, as he had to stay behind and pilot the command module. Now, part of the command module pilot's training was to come back on their own if there was a problem with the lunar module. And he states that he was disappointed because he wanted to go down to the surface so much that he could taste it. And as far as he was concerned, it was what it was all about. Not only going to the moon, but going down to the surface and walking on it. Now, just think about that for a minute. You've gone all that way and been one of the first people ever in the history of the planet to do it, and then you're not able to go down. You have to like wait for your mates to come back up again. How, mate? I don't know if I could cope with that. That would just absolutely freak me out. I would. It would freak me out big time. So, please, everyone, like I keep saying, please, please, please subscribe to Diesel Arsenal. Make sure you put a like on the video for me and Diesel, and make sure that you put the notification bell on for him so that whenever he uploads a video, you get to find out about it. And also come over to my channel, Warren's Team Talk, and subscribe to me, and do the same for me. Put likes on my videos and put your notification bell on so that you get notified anytime that Diesel or I upload a video. So what we're going to talk about now is the tension in mission control in the lead up to the landing. So the landing Tranquility Base. So the landing, as the spaceship landed, you can hear the people on the lunar landing saying when it landed, Tranquility Base here, the Eagle has landed. When you see the footage of the moments leading up to the landing of the people working in mission control, you can feel the tension almost coming out of the screen at you. The tension, excitement, nervousness, etc. on their faces was unbelievable. The culmination of all those years of hard work, thousands of people, the millions of dollars spent, the lives of the people that have been lost was now just moments away, and particularly the surface of the face of the flight director, Gene Kranz, which is the guy here in the picture. To me, tells its own story. His face, you can see the tension on his face as he's watching the lunar lander going into land. And when it lands, this is on the left, you can see a picture of the shadow of the lunar lander as it's landed on the moon. And then on the right, you can see the staff in mission control celebrating the landing. Some of them are smoking cigars and whatnot. Imagine that happening these days. People would be going nuts. Put that cigarette out. What are you doing smoking? No. It would just be unbelievable. So mankind's first steps on the moon. First steps on the moon, and Neil Armstrong's famous words, and Buzz Aldrin being the second man on the moon's famous words were, and Buzz Aldrin said, it might have been a small step for Neil, but it was a big step for a little fella like me. Now, one of the astronauts famously carried out an experiment, which was to drop a feather and hammer standing on the surface of the moon. Yeah, here we go. There's the picture. Now, in this picture, you can see that I've drawn a line to the hammer and then also to the feather. And he did this experiment on standing on the surface of the moon, which showed that because the moon has very low gravity, both the feather and the hammer, after being dropped, fell to the ground at the same time, which obviously wouldn't have happened here on Earth because of the higher gravity that is in place here. So, now, astronaut Charles Duke had a dream while he was on the moon because he, as he said, his mind is one that races all the time. So he had to take a sleeping pill. So this is what he said about his dream. Now, astronaut Charles Duke says that he had a strange, vivid dream he had on the moon. after taking a sleeping pill, and in his dream, he dreamt that he and his colleague were out in the moon buggy driving to the north, and they found some tracks. And so with NASA's permission, they followed the tracks, and eventually they found a moon buggy just like the one that they were driving in. They had two bodies in it, which looked like him and his colleague, and they'd been there for thousands of years. The astronaut who had this dream said that the dream was not like a nightmare at all. In fact, he described one of the most real experiences of his life. Now, for me, that just shows that he was terrified about not being able to get back to Earth again. Definitely. And the astronaut talking about feeling left on the moon, and they described it. Sorry, the astronaut talking about how he felt about being on the moon, and he described it as he felt like he was very welcome, and he felt that the moon had been waiting for man for thousands of years, and if not millions of years, even unless someone had been there before us, which he said was possible, but they didn't see any evidence of it. Not sure I believe that, but still, there you go. I feel like we were the only ones there, but not an alien, not like an alien who travels through space, not an alien in terms of invading someone else's domain. He went on to say that he found the moon to be bland in colour, but majestically beautiful, and how he felt it was just as important to stop and take in and think about where they were and what they were doing, and bring back a little bit of that as well. Just as important to go back with bits of rock from the surface of the moon and bring back those thoughts and feelings too. So, before we talk about the next one, let's go through some of these chats because I haven't. Taib says, "Hi, Warren, how are you?" Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Taib. Pictured reminds him of a Thunderbird. Oh God, that's Taib. You're fantastic, man. The guy with the hat. Laugh at that. What, me? You talking about? And Jeff P says JFK was definitely all about PR. Yeah, just like our football club, wasn't it, really? Narendra Moody says George Bush Sr. was involved with JFK assassination along with other intelligence agency. JFK was about to put his hand into the funding of these agency. Dave Riley, when was the last time astronauts stood on the moon? I think it was about 1972. Narendra Modi's Bud Aldrin's always hinted it was fake landing. He hinted, I've never heard him say that, but I've heard him hinting about stuff that they saw up there, about aliens and about structures and stuff like that. And he said stuff about Antarctica as well. Now, Nasandra, if you haven't watched that show on Diesel's channel about Antarctica, go and check that out because I'm sure you'll absolutely love it. Patrick, if anyone says it's fake, Buzz will punch them. Fair play, Patrick. That's hilarious. Right, so astronaut James Irwin talking about feeling a spiritual presence on the moon with them. Now, astronaut James Irwin said that he felt like an alien as they traveled through space, but when they got to the moon, they didn't feel like that. And in fact, they felt at home there, and they felt like he was at the end. He felt like he was the end of a thin cord that could be cut at any time. He also felt that he also said that he felt it was a precarious situation, which again goes back to what I learned earlier about the other guy who had the dream that I think they were terrified about being abandoned up there or not being able to get back again. And this is how it manifested itself. When he got on the moon, he didn't feel like he was an alien. He like he did when he was traveling through space, but he felt at home there, even though the Earth was such a long way away. And we could see it above the size of a marble, and realized that we were there by the grace of God, and that he felt he was at the end of a thin cord that could be cut at any time. He also said he felt it was precarious, but I felt comfortable, and I felt something other than I could visibly sense. A spiritual presence was there. Maybe it was because of so many people on the earth were focusing their attention. Maybe they were sending us, signals. Somehow I sense, in the same way that the first man on the earth would have felt, maybe like Adam, perhaps Eve. They were standing on the earth, and they realized that they were all alone, and there was no one else there on the earth, but they had that special communication. And I guess it was similar to the feelings that I had when I realized that Dave Scott and I were the only two on the planet, and this other world and we were the only two there, and we felt an unseen love. We were not alone. See, that's powerful, isn't it, really? So the astronauts here in this picture, you can see the astronauts uncovering a plaque on the side of the lunar lander, which stayed on the moon after they left. The plaque said, "Here man completed his first exploration of the moon," and it said, "May the spirit of peace in which we came be reflected in the lives of all mankind." Very nice. So here we can see the lunar lander taking off, and the astronaut said that the moon had become man's first outpost, our first footstep in space, and it enabled humans to look back at the Earth and see Earth and themselves in a different perspective. He then went on to say that when you leave the moon, you're able to recognize the places you explored, and you have the same feelings of awe as you did when you left the Earth. Now, this film changed my mind about the moon landing, because before I saw it, I was pretty much convinced that it was faked and it was a hoax. But for me, the testament of these guys that they came out with, who aren't professional actors, they are astronauts. You can find details about them online. What they were talking about, it can't be fake, it just can't. But the big question for me is not whether the moon landings were faked, but what they found when they got to them, because that is a completely different story, and one we're going to come to in a second. So once again, guys, please subscribe to Diesel Arsenal channel. Make sure you put a like on this video for us, and also please make sure that you subscribe to my channel, Warren's Teen Talk. Please make sure you put a like on my videos, and make sure you put on the notification bells on both my channel and Diesel's channel, so you get notified anytime that Diesel or I upload a video. That would be absolutely fantastic. So here we go. What we're going to talk now is about the hollow moon theory, because there's a big theory that the moon is artificial. It isn't a naturally occurring satellite. It was put there. Apollo 12 went to the moon on the 14th of November 1969, and one of its key objectives was to find out what was below the surface of the moon. So one of the things that they did was to leave seismometers on the surface of the moon to see if the moon had quakes like the Earth does. The astronauts then smashed objects into the surface of the moon with the objective of that being it would have helped them to understand the data that they were collecting from the seismometers they had left on the surface. But when they left the moon to return to Earth, they deliberately crash landed the lunar lander into the moon's surface to see what would happen. And it is alleged that the moon rang like a bell for an hour, and none of the Earth scientists are able to work out why this happened. And understanding the seismic data that the lunar lander crashing into the moon's surface produced, it is claimed that the only way that this can happen is if there are vast hollow areas under the moon's surface. Now, when Apollo 17 went to the moon on the 7th of December 1972, and whilst it was there, it claimed experiments under the general heading of the Chapel Bell, which to this day remain classified, and no one knows what the results of these experiments were, which has raised eyebrows and questions in many quarters. So let's move on. So fake satellite theory. It has been alleged in some quarters that the moon is in fact a fake satellite, which was placed into Earth orbit by an ancient extraterrestrial civilization for the purpose of monitoring the Earth and its inhabitants, and for allowing them to use our planet as a laboratory, which is a theory that many believe is the human race's purpose on planet Earth. One person in particular who believes this quite strongly is a lady by the name of Linda Moulton Howe. She's got a YouTube channel called Earth Files, and she's one of the biggest ufologists in the world. Her channel's got something like over 250,000 subscribers, if not more, and she's very, very knowledgeable about the subject. One of the many supporting factors in the theory is that in the theory that the moon is an artificial satellite, is that it appears to be far bigger than any other moon in comparison to their host planets in our solar system. Now, alien bases. It has been claimed that the moon has alien bases on it, particularly on the dark side of the moon, which always faces away from the Earth, meaning that it is not visible from the Earth. There have been numerous reports stating that the Apollo moon missions were watched from a distance by the aliens, and that Neil Armstrong, using Apollo's medical radio channel to talk to NASA, which was not broadcast to the public, whilst he and Buzz Aldrin were on the moon, about their encounters with the aliens. And for example, on one occasion, it is reported that he used the medical radio channel to tell NASA that the aliens are here and they are watching us from the crater. Now let's see, there's someone else in the chat. Dave Riley says, has anything been to the dark side of the moon? I believe they have. Certainly the command module, while it's waiting for the lunar lander, would be orbiting the moon, so they would have been seeing stuff on the dark side. The problem is as well with the dark side that is because it's not getting any sunlight, it's absolutely freezing cold and like hundreds of degrees below freezing. Down the years, there have been numerous people come forward who have claimed to be remote viewers. And one of the most famous of these was a guy by the name of Ingo Swann, who has been confirmed did work for the US government. Ingo Swann claims he was employed by the US government for his psychic abilities and particularly his ability to remote view. He claims that the moon has bases on it, which are populated by a hostile alien race who are mining the moon and who are also using water from the planet Earth. It has been confirmed that the CIA did employ people to remote view the moon, and although some of these reports are no longer classified, the ones about the moon are not. There have also been numerous reports from astronauts hearing signals coming from the hold on, I don't understand. Oh, right, okay. So there have been also numerous reports from astronauts hearing signals coming from the moon, but these reports are dismissed as nothing more than interference. And on top of this, there have been numerous photos leaked out which appear to show structures on the moon's surface, but these photos invariably tend to be out of focus or extremely blurry, which makes them extremely easy to discredit. And then, can this be explained by the US government deliberately using disinformation to cover up the real story? Possibly, yes. After all, it wouldn't be the first time that they've done this. Like, one thinks of this last show I did on this channel, the Roswell incident, where they put out a story about weather balloons that they later admitted was a fake story to cover up the test dummy situation where they were trying to see what would happen if they threw bodies down from high altitude and those sorts of things. It's an undeniable fact that the US and Soviet Union governments did employ remote viewers during the Cold War, and the Soviets were masters of it. Famously, they used it during the World Chess tournaments to try and give chess players from the Soviet Union an advantage over their opponents. So what they would do is, when a player from the Soviet Union was playing an opponent from other countries, they would try and manipulate their opponent's brain to impinge their ability to perform as well as they otherwise could do. So next slide talks about why humans have never returned to the moon. It's been claimed by many who believe that the moon landing was faked, that the reason that NASA did not return to the moon was that the landings were faked, and that NASA did not have the technological wherewithal to safely send humans to the moon and then bring them home again. It should be noted that after the last manned Apollo mission in 1972, NASA had budget cuts placed upon it, and the general public started to lose interest in NASA's work. But I do believe that there is another bigger reason that's not been discussed. And that is, if you consider the advances that were made in 12 short years in which humanity was able to go from launching its first ever artificial satellite to being able to safely send and return 3 humans to the moon, and 2 of them explore the surface before returning home again, it seems logical to me that we should have by now ventured further out into space than what we have done. I believe that the reason that we have not explored further into space is because we've been warned off by the civilization which allegedly has been on the moon and is hostile to us humans, which is a massive concern. And military experts have said that if there is a hostile alien civilization on the moon, then it represents a huge security implications for the planet. Another interesting fact to remember when thinking about the subject is a curious and baffling speech made on the 25th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing on the moon. In this speech, Neil Armstrong mentions how there were students in the audience and there was much left undone, and those working on the Apollo missions, I assume, had only completed the beginning, and there are great breakthroughs available for those who can remove one of the truth's protective layers. Now, to me, that's really out there, and it says far more than what he actually said in words. It's quite an incredible statement. So the secret space program has also been claimed that the United States has a secret space program which has operated alongside NASA's public-facing program, and it is claimed that this secret space program has been operating since at least the 1970s, and the secret space program has reached out through all our solar system and most of our galaxy, and has trading agreements with other civilizations. Now, I'm not sure about us going out into other parts of the galaxy, or having trading agreements, but I wouldn't disbelieve the fact that we've gone out to different planets in our solar system. I wouldn't disbelieve that at all. It's also been claimed that the secret space program has secret bases on the moon, and that the US has partnered with other countries in the development and running of the secret space program, such as the UK, France, and Germany, etc. So there we have it. So please make sure you subscribe to the Diesel Arsenal channel. Please put a like on this video for us, and please make sure you come over to my channel and put a like on my videos and subscribe to my channel as well. And please make sure you hit the notification bell as well on Diesel's channel and on my channel, so you get notified anytime that me or him upload a new video, because both work really hard to put these videos together for you. So any support that you want to give us will be truly, truly appreciated. And Nassandra's just come in with another comment. Thanks, Warren. Great show. Thank you, Naranda. I'm really grateful. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Jeff P., what will the next video be on? I'm not 100% sure. I was speaking to Diesel earlier today, and by the end of October, I want to do one about Halloween, sort of talking about the history of Halloween and talk about where it came from, some of the traditions with it and stuff like that. Now, let me just finish this. So the next show on my channel, on the Warren's Team Talk channel, is going to be on this Saturday, the 1st of October. It'll be live on my channel from 2:30, and it will be the match day live show when I go through all the thrills and spills of the matches that kick off at 3 o'clock on the Saturday. So yeah, it's always a good laugh and light-hearted entertainment and an alternative view to talking about the matches. Now, let me go. I just want to dedicate this show to all the men and the women who have given their lives in the exploration of space, because unfortunately there's been quite a few of them. On Apollo 1, January 27th, 1961, we had Virgil I. Grissom, Edward H. White II, Roger F. Chaffee. Soyuz 1 on April 24th, 7, Vladimir Komarov. Soyuz 2 on the 30th of June, 1971, Georgy Dabrowski, Vladimir Volkov, Viktor Patasayev, and then the Challenger disaster. I'm sure most of you can remember that. It happened on the 28th of January 1986. It was the Challenger space shuttle. It took off from the launch pad, and then after a few minutes or so going through low Earth orbit, it exploded, killing all the people on board. And that was, like I say, January 28th, 1986. And that was Francis Scobie, Michael John J. Smith, Judith A. Resnick, Ronald McNair. And he was the guy that was going to play the music that was written by Jean-Michel Jarre for him. The Last Rendezvous. It's quite a moving piece of music, by the way. Ellison Omaruka, Gregory Jarvis, and Krista McAuliffe. So yeah, those poor people perished in the line of duty, and there's all their pinpricks. So big up to them, and may they rest in peace. So yeah, that was it. That was my show about the Apollo moon landing, whether it was faked or not. I hope you enjoyed it, and please, if you're watching this on playback, put a comment in telling me what you think, whether it was faked or not. Tell me about some of the subjects I've talked about, some of the theories I mentioned, whether you think I'm right, whether you think I'm wrong, whether you think there are other things that we could have been spoken about and we didn't. And yeah, and if you've been watching live and you want to ask me any questions about this subject, please feel free to put it in the comment section. And like I said, tomorrow I'm going to put some links in the comment section of this video for the documentary I was talking about for quite a while, for All Mankind, and also other interesting YouTube videos about this subject, which I think you'll find really fascinating if you enjoyed this show. And the Randa says, Vladimir Komarov knew shortcuts were taken prior to takeoff. Scientists were scared to say. I'm not surprised. Vladimir knew he would die before the lift. Oh, my God, poor guy. That's awful. That really is. So, yeah, guys, that's it. I'm going to finish up now. I hope you have a really great rest of the evening. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you so much for joining me and on Diesel's channel. There will be another show in a couple of weeks. Not sure what it's going to be about yet. I've got a few ideas, and I will let you know as soon as I know. And obviously I need to talk to Diesel about it as well, see what he thinks. And yeah, I've got a long list because you all kindly put in recommendations about what you wanted me to do about. So I'm going to go through that list as well. And anyone who's not watched one of these shows before, if you've got any ideas, or that goes for everyone really, if you've got any ideas about other shows you'd like me to do on this interesting subjects, please as well put that in the comments as well. It's always interesting to see what people want us to talk about, and we will try and do all of them. All right. So thank you very much for your input. I really do appreciate it. And I'm really happy that you seem to have enjoyed it and interacted with me quite a lot tonight. So I'm really grateful to that. Thanks very much, guys. Please take care. And don't forget, please subscribe to Diesel's channel. Please subscribe to my channel, Warren's Team Talk. And also don't forget to put likes on tonight's video and all our other videos, and make sure you put your notification bells on. All right. So take care, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. Look after yourselves and all your family and friends, and show some love and kindness around the world. And don't forget, keep your eyes on the skies, people. Take care. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.